call the roll, please?
Trustee Cornell.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Here.
Trustee Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Thomas.
Here.
Trustee Vree.
Here.
Trustee Vree, would you give us the background and information on how the financial committee went?
Yeah, had a meeting this week to go over several things. First off, we went over the results of the bond sale, and we had a very successful bond sale on July 9th, where we had 7 bidders. The lowest bidder being Raymond James came in with what would be an interest cost of 3.14%. And we felt it was a very successful deal. That interest rate is low relative to the rest of the market, and I think that speaks for how well Glencoe is doing. The maturities range from 2027 to 2034. At the end of it, the net deposited amount on July 30th, when the closing happens, will be $4,983,430. And just one other thing, the reason it went so well, or one of the reasons, Standard & Poor's reaffirmed our AAA credit rating. So all in, it was a very good bond sale, and we're happy with it. The next thing we talked about was the actuarial report. We had an actuary talk to us about our projections for the police and fire pension funds as we begin the 2016 budgeting process. This is one of the components that goes into it. The funds did well for the last year, performance-wise, investment performance-wise. The balance of the fund continues to grow nicely, but the obligations change based on some tables that we use, and so as a result, or tables that we're forced to use, as a result, the amount that the village will have to contribute in 2016 looks like it will rise by about 200 to possibly 300,000. So we're working through making sure we've got those numbers correct. And then finally, the financials for the village. Generally speaking, everything is going quite well. We're looking at the general fund, both revenue and expenses, being better than what we had budgeted earlier in the year. Some of that is timing, where we have been pushing off some of the expenses. So expenses look a little better than they might be at the end of the year, but generally speaking, so far things are quite good. The water fund would be the only thing where revenue is coming in a little worse than expected. That's really not a surprise based on how much rain we've had. But at the same time, we're keeping expenses low within the water fund. So the net is just fine. So all in, financials looked quite good, and we're in good shape.
Thank you. At the committee of the whole, we really took up 2 subjects to discuss. One was to discuss concepts with staff for them to use in drafting revisions to the village liquor code to create a number of broad classifications to fit the licenses in and the different concepts that go along with that. And the other subject we took up was the scheduling of 2 strategic visioning and planning meetings, one for August 27th and one for September 3rd, as village board workshops that will start at 6 p.m. on each of those dates to talk about long-term strategic planning for the village. All right. Is there anyone that has any questions on anything on the consent agenda? If there are no questions, may I hear a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Trustee Cornell.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Mulvaney.
Yes.
Trustee Pierce.
Yes.
Trustee Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Vree.
Yes.
This brings us to the period where if there's someone who would like to address the board on an item not on the agenda for this evening, this is the appropriate time. Lori, would you like to come up to the podium?
This is always difficult. First of all, it's nice to see everyone here, so thank you for giving me time to talk, and I know that you've had a long day already. I just want to bring this issue or this idea before you. I'm not expecting any action or opinion on it tonight. I know that you're working to recover revenue and increase income in ways that aren't related to necessarily property taxes. So I want to bring this idea to you. I think that we should be doing something or thinking about, like to consider recovering some revenue and administrative fees from the private beach construction projects that are beginning to proliferate on the North Shore. We have, let me see if I can make this work. We have one in progress. In Winnetka, they have a couple in progress. We have many that will be either are planned or have already completed. So we're missing a substantial revenue opportunity. The cost of these construction projects are between $3 and $5 million. The projects, because the permits are permitted by the state and the IDNR, the village doesn't collect any fees for that, and the IDNR, until very recently, collected no fees at all for these construction projects. Now they collect a $200 administration fee. Like I say, there are many of these projects either in the pipeline or one in construction now. We don't have that big lakefront, but there had been a moratorium on these projects, so there's pent-up demand. And there's also kind of a keep up the Joneses thing that's happening, not so much in Glencoe, but in our neighboring communities. So rather than make this a personal thing when somebody's got a permit before the village, I thought it would be wise for the board and the staff to consider this so it's not one individual person's property. The reason why there are permits for this through the IDNR is these private beaches are considered shore protection for the bluff. They often contain private stormwater outflows as well, also permitted by the state. But in order to build them, they fill the public lake and the public beach. The state administers the public rights as they relate to the lake, and that's why a permit is needed. The village government, you guys here in the room and ladies, are allowed to be more restrictive than the state, and you're also allowed to impose your own fees or your own rules on these structures. These projects, even though they're permitted by the state, do require staff administration and oversight. And because the IDNR is understaffed and underpaid and underfunded, the only people that are going to come out and see these are actually going to be our own staff. So examples of staff oversight for the village of Glencoe include dealing with neighboring residents, cooperating on associated engineering plans, and enforcing local ordinances. As I say, the IDNR has a hard time getting out of the office these days. Now there is noise and other disturbances for neighbors for months and months. These are long-term construction projects through the pleasant months of the year when we usually enjoy our private beaches. Some of the projects are staged off barges, so it's not like they're coming through town with their equipment, but the people come by car and they congest some of the narrow streets that we have by the lakefront. And while the DNR requires the finished structures to be able to be transversed, so the public right to run the water line is preserved during the construction project, usually you can't walk the beaches. And so this has an impact on not only the neighboring houses, but the people who enjoy beach walking from the whole town. And from our point of view as a village, many of us have been through this before. Once these structures are in the public land, nobody maintains them. The permit says the owners are required to maintain, but over time, as the deeds for these properties change, it falls upon the village to deal with the problems that are associated, and they can be serious public safety issues, and we've had that experience. So the three things I would suggest that the village loses out on by not capturing this revenue is that it requires a mandate for us to administer without any income. The good news is that you can take action as a board and staff to create some income from this. If you used your regular 3% permit fee for residential construction in Glencoe, a $5 million project would raise about $150,000. And a couple of those a year might fill a budget gap that we have somewhere else in the budget. There's little evidence that Cook County actually recognizes the improvements on these beachfronts because the village doesn't submit, the permit and construction information. I'm not a tax expert, but it would be nice to know that the village could capture the improvement value of the land through real estate taxes. I think we have trustees that are experts on this that are much better at it than I am, but think about that. And these projects do tend to diminish, not necessarily the beach values, maybe that's not a good way to say it, but it can disrupt disrupt over the long term the views of the neighbors, the lake views, when you see these piles of rocks. I hope I'm being clear. I don't have a picture of a finished one. There's first on the wetlands. They fill them with sand. They go around like this, and they're hard to get over. And they also make a very different view on the beach if you have a lakefront home than an undeveloped beach. So I'm asking to consider you craft an ordinance to allow the village to raise revenues from these improvements and the process of these improvements, and to ask staff to check and see really how quickly and how fast we can capture the additional revenue or value that these add to this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Any questions for Lori?
Well, I don't have a question, but I want to thank Lori for bringing it up and also comment on the fact that there is shoreline management plan. Maybe we can work some of this stuff into that shoreline management plan. I think is associated with the hazard, the hazmat work. It's one of the elements of the hazmat plan. And so maybe all these things can come together and be looked at as a whole.
Well, the other thing is I know some years ago, there was a concerted effort made to have block protection ordinances passed by the village, and it would be important, I would think, to make sure that those are being enforced in some of these projects.
And Lori, I assume you've delivered a copy of this to staff?
Yes, I thought it would be fair for the staff to see this before I brought it to you.
Okay, but that you will.
And we are already looking into it. The one issue that we anticipate is that being a non-home rule community, we may not have the authority to impose any sort of fee, fine, or otherwise
Right,
relative
because
to
this
this.
may be different from.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we're going to be looking into that.
Right, and could I clarify, I'm not looking for any punitive or fine?
Could
Oh,
you
sorry.
come back up to the mic, please? Thank you, Lori.
I'm not suggesting that this be punitive or any fine related. I'm suggesting that we have a building code where we collect percent of contract fees when you build a new house. The value of these shore protections is often as much as a whole new house, and we are not capturing that revenue now. So this is just purely revenue based, and it's just trying to bring these construction projects in our community under the building department's general practices.
But I think that and I understand, Lori, but I think the question is we'd have to understand, do we have jurisdiction in the first place?
What,
That's the
again,
question.
staff can clarify that for you, but my understanding is that, and Kenilworth went through this, they did have a project right next to their public beach. There was quite a controversy. I'm not trying to make this controversial, but what came up through that is that the community, the municipality, can be more restrictive to the IDNR in any way that it wants to be, but it cannot be less restrictive, and that includes food. So staff will get crafty next to that.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
There are a number of issues, because one of the things we were talking about in this that Lori was raising has to do with fees. In building fees, the fee is related to the cost of administering the code and the things that we're permitted to regulate. And as a non-home rule community, there are very major restrictions on what we can do. There are also some major restrictions on what we can do to regulate, because these may not be right next to our beach or part of infringing on part of our property. So it's necessary for us to, one, take a look at what the situation is and how what we would do would fit into that. That's what staff will look into in order to make a recommendation if there are things that we could do. Because certainly we are interested in capturing streams of revenue that would reduce other people's taxes.
Can I ask one more question? To what extent do these projects involve putting structures out into the lake? I know I've seen before, of course, that is somewhat derelict.
Which has been removed since that picture was
Right,
taken.
right.
Yeah.
But is that not permitted, or is that still?
That I could not answer for you at this particular moment. Lori seems to know the answer.
Phil, just out of curiosity, who removed that structure?
The homeowner removed it
They were required to.
at the
remove it.
village's urging.
Yes. the village had to.
Villages urging, or the village having authority to tell them you have to?
It was at the village's urging over a number of years.
And this is an example of the village time and effort. I'm trying to understand how much time and effort can go into something like that, where we're not compensated and our staff isn't compensated. But to answer Dale's question, at any point below the ordinary high water mark, which you can consider to be the towed bluff, the state has administration for the public trust doctrine, which means that they could administer for all of us. So these projects only need a permit from the state if they do fill the lake. And yes, they do. And the ones that are coming up for permit, public comment soon, and the one in progress, and ones that we've seen already, they're lovely structures. Require putting big stone revetments out. I think the limit is 120 feet into the lake. And then they have to be filled with sand. There's engineering requirements. So they're very elaborate, and that's why they're so expensive to do.
Well, the other thing is I know talking to my wife about, I believe it was Lake Forest, these things, when they go into the lake, can affect the littoral drift, I think it's called, and it can affect the sand deposits further down the lake, so I think that's another thing that we need to thought about.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the board can go on Google and look at any aerial photograph, even on our GIS webpage, and you can see the effect on the neighbors of the drifting sand. In the Kenilworth case, it was a beach that didn't have any disruptions, and you had a clear view down the beach, not just the homeowners, but the people who were on the public beach. And it's those rock things, if they're out into the lake, are very disruptive. But we're not here to talk about the aesthetics. I just think that it could be a revenue generator, and it certainly takes the time of our staff, and it has some detrimental effects on the community.
And so the question is a little different than regulation, because we're talking about what is it as non-home rule we have the ability to assess a fee for, and how would that fee relate to whatever services we actually perform in relationship to. Thank you, Art. Okay. Can I have the village manager's report, please?
Thank you. Yes, this is one of the first things we'll do this evening under my report is something that we've started to do recently, and one of my more favorite things to do during the manager's report, which is to welcome some new employees to the village and to swear them in. So I think we'll start with that, Carrie, or are you going to introduce them first?
I'll introduce them, then I'll make a story.
I think that's a great plan.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. President, members of the board, it's my pleasure this evening to introduce our two newest officers, Jonathan Boersma and Derek Mortensen. Can you step up here? I'll spend a few minutes talking about each one of them, then I'll have Mr. Crowley come down here to administer the oath. Jonathan's joined by his parents tonight, Pam and Dave. And in May of 2014, John took the Glencoe Public Safety Commission's written examination for public safety officer. He was placed on our eligibility list, and we hired him in April of 2015. John comes to us with certifications as both a paramedic and a firefighter, which will allow us to expedite his timetable to become a fully cross-trained public safety officer for us. In fact, he's been employed as a paramedic firefighter since 2010. John attended and graduated from the 12-week Illinois State Police Academy on July 2nd, and since then he's been participating in our field training officer program over the last 2 weeks. We hope to release him to solo patrol in October. From what we've seen so far, we fully expect John to become a valued member of the department in a very short time. John will be taking the public safety officer oath of office this evening to fill one of the vacancies created by the board-approved staffing level increase from 33 to 36 sworn officers earlier this year. Jonathan, congratulations and welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Next is Derek Mortensen. He's joined here tonight by his parents, Betty and Rich, his brother Tyler, and his girlfriend Michelle. Also in May of 2014, Derek took our written examination for public safety officer, was placed on our eligibility list, and we hired him also in April of 2015. While away at college, Derek attained a certification as an emergency medical technician, and he recently attained the basic firefighter certification. So again, Derek is giving us an opportunity to expedite his time frame to become a fully cross-trained public safety officer as well, which is very beneficial for us, both in time and in cost over the first 2 or 3 years of his employment here. Derek also attended the Illinois State Police Academy, graduated on July 2nd. He's also been part of our FDO program for 2 weeks. And again, based on the short time he's been with us and what we learned throughout his background investigation, we fully expect Derek to be an excellent addition to the department, and we look forward to many years of superior service from Derek. Derek also will be taking the public safety officer oath of office this evening to fill one of the vacancies as directed by the board, and we increase from 33 to 36-1. Derek, congratulations. Mr. Crowley, if you want to administer the oath.
This is the hardest part of it.
A little slow.
I will go slowly. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Both of you, and you do it at the same time. I state your name.
I, John Morton,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances of the Village of Glencoe,
and the ordinances of the Village of Glencoe,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the position of Public Safety Officer
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Public Safety Officer
very good. According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Welcome to Glencoe, gentlemen.
Mike,
Glad to have you on board.
yeah.
Thank you.
My question
Thank you to
is,
your families for coming.
I've seen several police academy movies. Is it as much fun in the real police academy?
Not the
No?
same.
No? All right.
Welcome to both of you, and welcome to a wonderful family that we like to call the Village of Glencoe. And we're so pleased that you're joining the ranks of what is probably one of the most unique departments in the state of its kind, if not the most unique departments of the state, and you're joining a long tradition, and we're happy that you're here. So thank you, and thank you to your families for coming this evening.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I just have a few other items on my report that I will go through quickly here. I wanted to provide a brief update to the board relative to the water system study information meetings. In late May and through the month of June, staff made presentations at 3 public information meetings regarding the water system planning study, which was presented to the board back in March. I'm excited to say that these 3 meetings were very well attended. We attracted a total of over 80 residents, and they were informal opportunities for them to learn more about the options presented in the report and to allow for an open, informal dialogue about the water treatment plant in general with our staff. Staff has assembled the questions, comments, and thoughts that were shared, and we will be providing those to the village board in the future, along with other information that is currently under development. This includes further, more detailed cost analysis, a water rate impact analysis, as well as a review of the village's other long-term water system needs aside from the water plant. We continue to receive a number of questions via email to the village's dedicated email address, which is waterplant@villageofglencoe.org, and answers to those questions as they are answered are posted to the village's website for the benefit of others who may be interested. We continue to encourage the community to examine the information that's been posted on the website, including there are several videos of the presentations that were made both at the village board meeting and at one of our public sessions back in May. Again, all of that is available on the village's website. We'll be coming back to the board later this year with more information. Green Bay Road construction. I wish to sincerely express staff's gratitude to our residents and others that traverse Green Bay Road for your continued patience as we progress toward completing the resurfacing project on Green Bay from Park Avenue North to Lake Cook Road. The first course of asphalt went down today on the northernmost section of Green Bay, and this process will continue this week through Saturday, weather permitting. This will be followed by work next week to raise manhole structures in preparation for the final course of asphalt, which will begin to go down late next week, again, weather permitting. Unfortunately, this does mean that there will be some intermittent lane closures and some continued delays until project completion, but the good thing is we are nearing that. We are continuing to post construction updates on the village's website and have been utilizing Glencoe Connect as necessary to advise of other construction updates. Again, sincerely appreciate the patience of drivers who are both our residents and those who drive through town. I can understand, I've been stuck in a few 10-minute delays and myself, and I know those can be frustrating, but unfortunately the width of Green Bay Road and some of the appurtenances within the roadway tend to keep it from being possible to keep all of the lanes open during these processes. So again, we are working diligently to get this project completed. As we all prepare for Sheridan Road, which is the next roadway which will be resurfaced. And that is a state project that we anticipate will commence in probably September. We're waiting for some more information. Last but not least, the Glencoe Festival of Art is coming up August 1st and 2nd downtown here on Vernon and Park Avenues. We are expecting over 110 artists this year. I consider this personally one of the finest art festivals on the North Shore. I'm not sure why I'm biased in that way, but it is a great art festival, and I encourage you, if you've never been, to take the time to walk downtown and enjoy it. In a couple of Saturdays, not this coming Saturday, but 2 weeks or a week from this coming Saturday, both Public Safety and Public Works departments will host an open house here at the Village Hall. It's a great opportunity to meet some of our staff and a great opportunity for kids in the community and adults maybe to sit in some of our equipment and feel like a firefighter for the day or for the minute, or a backhoe operator or something else like that. That's the only day I think they let me sit in those pieces of equipment, so I think it's kind of a fun thing. So I encourage you to participate in that. And finally, you may have seen this week there was a flurry of activity relative to the Historical Society, the Glencoe Historical Society's efforts to commemorate the centennial celebration of the Ravine Bluff subdivision. The decorated replica markers that were designed by Frank Lloyd Wright have been installed throughout the downtown area. There are 14 of them in strategic locations, and they are actually a really neat addition to our downtown. They will be in place through the end of September, after which they will be removed.